mother and her daughter vanished without a trace during what was supposed to be a routine tour through the Amazon rainforest. For 9 weeks, no one could explain where they had gone, until a chance discovery during a final search changed everything. The jungle's heat clung to Jordan's heart like a wet blanket as he pushed through the dense vegetation, every step sinking into the damp, uneven ground. His walking stick helped him stay balanced, while his backpack, loaded with supplies and growing heavier by the hour, pulled at his shoulders with every breath. But that weight was nothing compared to the one in his chest. It had been 9 long weeks since his wife, Julia, and their 10-year-old daughter, Daphne, disappeared during a river excursion. 9 weeks of searching, hoping, and fighting off the creeping fear that he might never see them again. Ahead of him, 2 Colombian officers led the way, occasionally slicing through thick vines with their machetes. Officer Diego Mendoza turned back, wiping sweat from his brow. "Senor Hart," he said in steady English, "we've searched for 4 hours now. Nothing new compared to previous days." Jordan gave a silent nod but didn't slow down. The second officer, Carlos Ruiz, exchanged a quiet look with his partner. "Perhaps we should consider turning back. The weather won't hold forever, and light will fade in a few hours." "Just a little longer," Jordan replied, his voice firm. Mendoza exhaled but didn't argue. Instead, he said what had likely been on their minds all along. "Senor Hart, we understand your hope, but no one survives this jungle for 9 weeks without gear or deep knowledge of the terrain. Between the wildlife, sudden floods, and isolation, it's not a forgiving place," Ruiz added gently. "We found their boat 2 weeks ago. The damage suggested it got caught in a strong current. Maybe they were hit by a storm or lost their way with the guide." Jordan's jaw clenched. "My wife knows how to adapt, and Daphne's smart. They could have reached shelter or even a village." Mendoza's voice lowered. "Even seasoned guides don't last long here without resources." Silence fell between them as the jungle continued its unrelenting chorus, birds calling, insects buzzing, monkeys chattering in the canopy. Another 20 minutes passed before Ruiz stopped abruptly. "This area is known for predators. Jaguars move through here. It's not safe." Jordan glanced at the sky. Through the thick branches, he could spot pockets of clear blue. "The weather's calm today. Let's use it. Maybe we can shift the route. Stay clear of that section." The officers hesitated. Then Mendoza said, "We'll continue. But if we smell animal waste or hear anything suspicious, we pull out. No arguments." "Agreed," Jordan said, without hesitation. They veered off slightly, making their way through a less dense stretch. As they walked, Officer Ruiz shared a cautionary tale. A tourist who had wandered into the same region years earlier despite warnings. They only found his camera and scraps of his gear. The rest had vanished. Jordan felt a cold shiver cut through the heat. He tried to ignore the story, but the thought burrowed into his mind. Was this what happened to Julia and Daphne? Then something caught his eye. A large tree stood to their right, its trunk partially hidden by vines. At first, the marks looked like scratches, but the pattern felt too deliberate. "Wait," Jordan called out, stopping the group. "That tree. Look." The officers turned. "Those aren't animal marks," Jordan said, stepping closer. Someone was trying to leave a message. He brushed the vines aside, and there it was. On the other side of the tree, freshly carved into the bark, a set of coordinates. And underneath, a single letter. J. Jordan's heart pounded. "These are coordinates," he said, motioning them over. Mendoza leaned in, typed the coordinates into his phone, and for a moment, Jordan saw it. A flicker of something behind the officer's expression. The man's face stiffened. "This is nothing," Mendoza said flatly. "Actually, we've seen these before. Right, Ruiz?" Officer Ruiz hesitated. "Yes, I think so." But Jordan wasn't convinced. He traced the carvings with his fingers. The wood felt smooth, fresh, too fresh to ignore. Jordan stared at the carving. And the letter J? That wasn't just a coincidence. His wife's name was Julia, but Officer Ruiz only shrugged. J could stand for anything. Julio, Jose, Juan. It's a common letter, he said. We're confident these carvings have been here a while, Officer Mendoza added, his tone leaving little room for debate. Jordan wasn't convinced, but he nodded, choosing not to argue. As the officers turned their attention elsewhere, he quietly pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of the tree and the coordinates, just in case. That's when Ruiz suddenly stiffened, nostrils flaring. "Do you smell that?" he asked sharply. Mendoza's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. "Jaguar scent. We head back, now." Jordan didn't smell anything, but as he looked down, he spotted something the others had missed. A sharpened sliver of wood lying in the dirt. It looked exactly like a homemade carving tool. His heart pounded. He picked it up quickly and tucked it into his backpack before catching up to the officers. "What about the coordinates?" he asked as they quickened their pace through the trees. "Even if they're old, don't you think we should check them out? My wife and daughter might have seen them, maybe even carved them." "We'll discuss it at the station," Mendoza replied shortly. "Right now we need to get back to the boat. Safety first." The walk back took 45 tense minutes. Both officers were on edge, hands hovering close to their weapons the entire way. When they finally reached the riverbank, Jordan felt a mix of relief and rising frustration. Something about this didn't feel right. They boarded the boat, and the captain fired up the motor. As they moved along the muddy waters, Jordan pulled out his phone again. He opened the photo of the tree and typed the coordinates into an online map. They pointed to a remote section of the Vopay department near the Inirida River, deep inside the forest, far from any major roads or villages. But just as he began searching for more details, the boat suddenly lurched. Jordan lost his balance, and Officer Mendoza stumbled into him. In the chaos, Jordan's phone slipped from his hands and disappeared over the side. "No!" he shouted, reaching toward the water, but it was too late. The phone was gone. My contacts. My connection to home. Without hesitation, he tore off his shirt and dove in. The current wasn't strong, and the water wasn't deep. He forced his eyes open despite the sting, scanning the murky riverbed until he spotted the faint glow of his screen. With his lungs aching, he reached out, grabbed the phone, and kicked his way back to the surface. The officers helped pull him back onto the boat. He sat there, soaked and gasping, clutching the dripping device. The screen was still lit, but for how long? Acting fast, Jordan powered it down and pulled out the battery, shaking out as much water as he could. He muttered a Spanish phrase he'd picked up during his time in Colombia. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd finally found a lead, and now he might have lost it again. Officer Ruiz tried to comfort him. "If your wife or daughter try to reach you, they'll contact the police. We'll let you know right away." Jordan nodded, but the words rang hollow. Without his phone, he couldn't double-check the coordinates, and more importantly, he'd have to rely entirely on the officers. Officers he was beginning to seriously distrust. The boat ride back was silent. No conversation, no reassurance, just the sound of the motor and the weight of unspoken questions. When they arrived at the dock, a waiting jeep transported them to the police station in Mitu. Once there, Officer Mendoza gestured toward a small room. "Please wait here while we discuss next steps." Jordan hesitated, then said, "Before my phone fell, I saw where the coordinates lead. Somewhere in Vaupés, near the Inirida River." Mendoza nodded. "That's right. But organizing a search takes planning. This is police business, Senor Hart. You can't be part of the discussion." Jordan wanted to argue but bit his tongue. Understood. Left alone in the room, he sat at a desk, found a notepad and pen, and scribbled down everything he could recall. 2 Threading North, 69.8 West. The letter J. He folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. Then he sat back, alone with his thoughts. His mind drifted to the day everything changed. It had started as the perfect trip. He, Julia, and Daphne exploring Colombia. A week in Bogota, a few days in Cartagena, and then the Amazon, meant to be the grand finale. The day of the river tour, Jordan woke up feeling awful, likely food poisoning from something he'd eaten the night before. With just 3 days left in their trip, Daphne had been buzzing with excitement for weeks about the jungle. Despite the cramps and exhaustion, he urged them to go. "You should still go," he'd told them that morning, clutching his stomach. "The hotel says it's safe. Take lots of pictures." Julia hesitated. "We can wait a day, see how you feel." "Better you go," Jordan had said that morning, curled up in bed, his stomach twisting in knots from the night before. "It's just a few hours, right? I'll be fine by the time you get back, and you can tell me everything." That was the last time he saw them. The canoe trip, booked through the hotel's excursion desk, had seemed safe, ordinary, a typical tourist activity, brief, scenic, and supervised. But Julia, Daphne, and their guide had never returned. Jordan's thoughts were interrupted when an officer stepped into the waiting room, carrying a laptop. "Senor Hart, we've uncovered some new information," he said. Jordan followed him into a small office where a man introduced himself as Detective Vargas and closed the door behind them. "We've confirmed some details about the man who took your wife and daughter on the river tour," Vargas began. "His name was Ricky Gairo. He wasn't officially registered. Not with your hotel, not with any tour agency." Jordan's chest tightened. "What?" Vargas nodded. "Locals say he does odd jobs, sometimes fishing, sometimes guiding tourists, but nothing formal. No licenses, no records." He pulled up images on the screen. "We also reviewed the weather and river data from the day they vanished. There were no storms. The current was mild, nothing unusual." "But you found their boat damaged," Jordan interrupted. "Wasn't that from the river?" The detective shook his head. "Not likely. These breaks in the canoe," he zoomed in on splintered wood, "they don't match damage from rocks or rapids. The patterns suggest human interference." Jordan leaned back in his chair, mind spinning. "Are you saying they were taken?" Vargas stood, checked the hallway, then gently shut the door again. When he returned to his seat, his tone dropped. "Off the record, I don't trust everyone in this station. I have to be cautious. But my team heard whispers in Gairo's village. Someone saw a group of people find his body and take it." Jordan froze. "His body? You're saying he's dead?" "We can't confirm that officially," Vargas said. "But that's what locals believe. No one's talking. When asked who took him or where, they shut down. Not a word, not even a glance." A chill crept over Jordan. If they got to him, what about Julia and Daphne? "We've heard nothing about violence toward tourists," Vargas said carefully. "Especially foreigners. The locals know it brings heat. But still, I won't make promises I can't keep." Jordan's voice cracked. "So what now? I saw coordinates carved into a tree. My phone's ruined, but I wrote them down." He handed Vargas the slip of paper. "You said you were with Officers Mendoza and Ruiz today?" Vargas asked, taking the note. "That changes things. Their names were already on my radar. The fact they were with you and reacted oddly? That confirms what I feared." He typed the partial coordinates into his computer and turned the screen toward Jordan. A wide swath of deep green jungle filled the map. That area's remote, untouched by most. Some zones around there are known for unofficial activity, trafficking routes, hidden paths. Jordan studied the map, then looked Vargas in the eye. "Can I trust you?" Vargas didn't flinch. "If I said yes, would you believe me?" He spun the monitor again, this time revealing a list of documented cases. 17 officers in this region, all investigated by me, all convicted. That's just the past 5 years. He leaned forward. "I can't force your trust, But if you're serious about finding your family, you'll need someone who doesn't answer to the wrong people. Jordan stared at the screen. Names, dates, photographs, meticulously archived. Vargas wasn't just talking. He had the receipts. After a long pause, Jordan nodded. I trust you. A flicker of relief crossed Vargas's face. Good, he said. But listen, we can't just show up at those coordinates. That stretch of jungle, what's out there, isn't just nature. It's men with power, weapons, and secrets. If we go in blind, we won't come back. Then what? Jordan asked, desperation rising again. My family could be there. I'll send people I trust, Vargas said. Quietly, carefully, Detective Vargas leaned in. I'm sending trusted men to quietly join the search team that Mendoza and Ruiz are organizing. They'll be there to keep an eye on everything and to protect you if anything goes wrong. You're not coming? Jordan asked, clearly disappointed. Vargas shook his head. If I show up, it'll raise red flags. Everyone in this station knows my history, especially Mendoza and Ruiz. If I suddenly attach myself to their operation, they'll know something's off. He placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder. But the people I'm sending have stood by me for years. You can count on them. Jordan nodded, though a knot twisted in his stomach. I understand. Good. Now go back to the waiting room, Vargas instructed. Act normal. As far as they know, you've heard nothing. Jordan did exactly that, returning to his seat with a calm expression, though his thoughts were spinning. How deep did this go? How many were involved? Was it just this station, or something bigger? Barely 20 minutes later, Mendoza and Ruiz approached, trying to look professional. Señor Hart, Mendoza said with a rehearsed smile, we've finalized a plan. Jordan looked up and forced a polite nod. That's good news. We'll travel to a small village near the coordinates you found, Ruiz explained. From there, we'll organize a base camp and launch daily search parties for about a week. You're welcome to join, Mendoza added. But for your own safety, you must follow our lead. Of course, Jordan replied, just as he and Vargas had agreed. I really appreciate everything you're doing. They gathered supplies, loaded up the vehicles, and soon departed. Jordan was told they'd be traveling in 2 police jeeps, 5 officers total, handpicked by Mendoza and Ruiz. Vargas had told him quietly before departure that his team would follow later, unnoticed. The journey took nearly 3 hours down barely navigable jungle roads. Trees pressed in from all sides, turning the path into a tunnel of green. The ride was rough, jerking and bouncing the whole way. Jordan felt sick by the second hour. You don't look so good, Ruiz observed, offering a small pill. Jungle roads get to everyone. Jordan accepted it, but didn't swallow, discreetly slipping it into his pocket. Whatever trust he'd once had was long gone. The village, Puerto Esperanza, was little more than a cluster of wooden huts by the river. Children played in the dirt, older men lounged in the shade, and no one paid the new arrivals much attention. The locals are cautious, Mendoza explained. Don't take it personally. Jordan was shown to a small room in a local family's home. It was basic but tidy. A narrow bed, a wooden table, and 1 chair. The family barely acknowledged him as Ruiz explained the sleeping arrangements. It's getting late, Mendoza said. We'll start early tomorrow. Get some rest. Left alone, Jordan set the pill on the table, watching it as if it might move on its own. He didn't trust anything they gave him. Slowly, his nausea faded on its own. Outside, the jungle darkened. The only light in the room came from a flickering oil lamp. No electricity, Jordan muttered. He lay on the bed, not expecting sleep, listening to every creak of the wooden floorboards, every distant voice in the night. Could Julia or Daphne be nearby? Were they alive? He didn't know when he drifted off, but he woke with a start. The door creaked. A shadow moved. Before he could react, a figure lunged. A pillow slammed down over his face. He thrashed, panicked, but the attacker was strong, unyielding. Jordan clawed at the man's arms, trying to breathe, but then another set of hands grabbed his legs. 2 of them. He fought with everything he had, lungs burning, mind spinning, but his body was shutting down. His strength faded, his vision swam. Just before the darkness took him, he heard a voice mutter in Spanish, "Make sure he doesn't wake up until we reach the camp." Then, nothing. Consciousness returned in slow, stuttering waves, a pounding headache, a dry mouth, limbs that felt made of stone. Jordan blinked. Above him, dim light filtered through thick metal bars. A cage. He was lying on damp dirt, cold against his back. With effort, he pushed himself upright, ignoring the dizzy rush in his head. Figures moved above him, shadows walking across a grated ceiling. He wasn't alone. "Hello?" he called, his voice hoarse. "Can anyone hear me?" A small rock suddenly struck his shoulder, hard. "Hey!" he shouted again. Another stone? This one nearly hit his face. "Don't bother," came a low voice behind him, from the shadows. "They'll keep throwing things if you make noise." Jordan spun around, heart hammering. His head pounding, Jordan hadn't even realized he wasn't alone until he spotted movement in the far corner of the cell. As his eyes adjusted, he saw the silhouette of a man sitting with his back against the wall. "Who are you?" Jordan asked, keeping his voice low. The figure shifted into a faint sliver of light. He looked like he was in his 30s, with a sun-worn face, bruises on his skin, and torn clothes clinging to a thin frame. "My name doesn't matter," the man replied, his accent unmistakably local. "We're in the same place now, prisoners, in one of their jungle labs." "Lab?" Jordan repeated. "What kind of lab?" The man gave a bitter laugh. "Cocaine. This place is a full-scale drug operation, buried deep in the rainforest, far from anything, far from anyone who cares." Jordan's stomach turned. "But I was brought here by police." The man scoffed. "Police? Maybe. Maybe not. Doesn't matter. Many of them work both sides, some for a paycheck, some for power, but they're the ones who bring people in." And just like that, Jordan felt the full weight of what had happened crash down on him. Mendoza and Ruiz never intended to help. They delivered him, right into the hands of traffickers. "Wait," Jordan said, suddenly taking a closer look at the man. Are you Ricky Giro?" The man's eyebrows lifted. "How do you know that name?" "I'm Jordan Hart. My wife Julia and our daughter Daphne were with you on that river tour. You all disappeared. That was 9 weeks ago." Recognition flashed across Giro's bruised face. "You're Julia's husband, the American." Jordan moved closer. "Have you seen them? Do you know if they're alive?" Giro gave a slow nod. "I've heard them, their voices, sometimes above this cell, near the bars." He gestured upward toward the metal grate above them. "But it's been 3 days since I last heard anything. They move people constantly. I don't know where they are now." Jordan felt torn between overwhelming relief and creeping panic. His wife and daughter, they had been alive, still might be, but they were captives, and time was running out. "What happened on the river? How did you end up here?" Before Giro could answer, a heavy clang echoed through the ceiling above. The grate shifted, and a rope ladder dropped into the cell. "Giro! Up!" a voice barked in Spanish. Giro stood slowly, his expression blank, resigned. Jordan instinctively rushed toward the ladder, desperate to follow, but a boot came down hard, catching him in the chest and sending him crashing back. "Not your turn," the man growled in English. "We'll come for you soon enough." Giro climbed up and vanished through the opening. Jordan could hear muffled voices above him. He couldn't catch every word, but one line stopped him cold. "This is your last day, Giro. The buyer's ready. Chop him up clean." Jordan froze. He knew what that meant. This wasn't just a drug operation. This place was part of something much darker. They weren't just producing, they were selling people, piece by piece. Before he could even begin to grasp the horror, the grate opened again. Another man appeared, holding a pistol. "You, let's go." The ladder dropped again. "Try anything," the man added, waving the gun, "and it ends here." Jordan climbed the ladder with trembling hands. He emerged into a dimly lit warehouse, barrels stacked high, work tables littered with chemicals, masked workers moving with robotic precision. Everything Gyro had said was true. A full production site, hidden in plain sight. Gyro stood nearby, guarded on both sides. Several other prisoners, thin, scared, and broken, were being pushed toward the exit. Through a grimy window, Jordan saw a truck pull up. Armed men jumped out, and he and the others were shoved toward the vehicle. As he climbed into the back, another engine growled in the distance. A second truck. Jordan turned, and his heart stopped. Bound and blindfolded, stepping out of that second vehicle, were Julia and Daphne. "Julia! Daphne!" he shouted, voice cracking with everything inside him. They turned toward the sound, and their eyes met. In that single, fleeting moment, Jordan saw it all: shock, recognition, hope. But before he could take a step forward, a rifle stock slammed into his face. He hit the truck bed hard, the taste of blood flooding his mouth. The engine roared to life. Blood trickled from his nose as the truck bounced forward, deeper into the jungle. 2 armed guards sat at the back, weapons raised, but Jordan didn't care about them. He could still see Julia's face. He could still see Daphne's eyes. After 9 weeks of nightmares, of uncertainty, he had finally found them. And then, just as quickly, they were gone again. Cruel, twisting, unbearable, but not the end. Not yet. The urge to give in nearly crushed him. But seeing Julia and Daphne again, even for that one fleeting moment, ignited something inside Jordan that burned hotter than fear. He wasn't going to lose them again. Not now. Not ever. His eyes flicked to the closest guard. Young, maybe early 20s. Hands twitching, jaw tight. He held a pistol, but it wasn't steady. It bobbed slightly with every bump in the road. Jordan made his decision. Any hope of backup arriving from Detective Vargas's team had vanished. If there was any chance left, it lived in this moment, and in what he chose to do next. As the truck bounced over a rough patch of road, Jordan lunged. He grabbed the young guard's wrist and twisted upward. The pistol went off with a sharp crack, the bullet punching through the canvas roof of the truck. The other prisoners screamed and ducked. Jordan wrestled for control, kneeing the guard hard in the stomach, then yanking the weapon from his grip. As the young man collapsed, Jordan spun and leveled the pistol at the second guard. "Drop it," he shouted, his voice sharp, breathless. "Drop it now." For a second, the guard hesitated, and that was enough. Ricky Gyro and 2 other prisoners surged forward, slamming the second guard backward. The truck veered dangerously as the driver realized something had gone wrong. Gunfire erupted, the driver firing wildly through the back window. Someone cried out. A prisoner hit. Jordan didn't wait. "Jump!" he shouted, shoving Gyro toward the back of the moving truck. "Now! Everyone jump!" There was no hesitation. One by one the prisoners leapt, hitting the dirt hard and rolling. Jordan jumped last, tucking his body and slamming into the embankment. Pain tore through his shoulder, but he forced himself upright. The truck skidded to a stop ahead. The driver and passenger jumped out, weapons raised. Jordan bolted into the jungle, ducking low, weaving through vines and trees. A shot cracked behind him. Bark exploded inches from his face. He kept moving, zigzagging, heart pounding. Only when he was sure he'd lost them did he stop to catch his breath. He checked the stolen pistol. 6 rounds left. Not much, but better than empty hands. Sunlight filtered through the canopy. Using it as his guide, Jordan began making his way back toward the compound. He had to get to Julia and Daphne before they were moved again. 15 minutes of tense navigation brought him to a large clearing. He crouched behind a fallen tree and surveyed the scene. The compound was far larger than he'd imagined. Buildings, tents, storage sheds, all surrounded by a chain-link fence. Armed men patrolled the perimeter. Vehicles came and went through a guarded gate. Then his heart dropped. The truck he'd seen earlier, the one Julia and Daphne had been near, was gone. Had he already lost them? No. He spotted them, Julia and Daphne, being led toward a different truck, newer, cleaner. A man in expensive clothing, flanked by 2 bodyguards, was overseeing the transfer. He looked like he was giving orders, impatient, in control. "The boss," Jordan whispered. Panic surged again. Once that truck left, they might vanish for good. A sudden commotion broke out near the main gate. Shouts, gestures, armed men pointing toward the jungle, toward the direction Jordan had just come from. The escaped driver must have returned. Jordan didn't waste the distraction. He circled the compound, sticking to the tree line, searching for a weak point. Near one of the smaller buildings, he spotted a tent, and on a nearby table, his backpack. His heart leapt. No one was watching. He slipped under a loose section of fence and sprinted to the tent. Inside, he found everything: his pack, the wooden shard from the carved tree, and his phone. The battery he'd removed after the river dive was still tucked in a side pocket. With trembling fingers, he reassembled the phone and pressed the power button. The screen flickered again. Then, dim light. Water damage clouded the corners. The touchscreen jittered, unreliable. But it was alive. Jordan ducked behind the nearest building as footsteps approached. Through a crack in the wall, he saw them, Julia and Daphne, being loaded into the truck. They looked exhausted. Daphne's cheek streaked with tears. Julia, her face was blank, distant, not broken, but fading. And Jordan was out of time. She looked catatonic. The sight tore into Jordan like glass. What had they been through these past 9 weeks to leave them like this? The truck's engine roared to life. Time was gone. Jordan pressed the emergency dial and whispered into the receiver, praying the signal would hold. "Emergency services. What is your emergency?" "My name is Jordan Hart," he breathed. "I'm an American citizen. I've been abducted by a cartel in the Valpes region. They have my wife and daughter too." He spoke quickly, packing the call with every urgent detail he could manage. "Please, connect me with Detective Vargas in Mitu. There are officers working with these people." "Stay on the line, senor," the operator said. "We're attempting to trace your location." "My phone's damaged," Jordan warned. "It could die at any second." "I'll keep the line open as long as I can." As he spoke, he moved through the trees, keeping to the shadows, tracking the truck now carrying his family. It was moving slowly over the rugged terrain, giving him just enough time to stay on its trail. "There's some kind of structure ahead," he told the operator, describing the concrete building that emerged between the trees. "It looks like another facility, bigger, heavily guarded." "Detective Vargas's team is nearby," the operator replied. "They're moving toward your position." But then came the static, crackling, skipped words, then silence. The call had dropped. He was alone again, but closer than he had been in 9 weeks. The new facility was a fortress, a concrete structure with barred windows and high fencing, surrounded by jungle. It was smaller than the drug lab, but better defended, with fewer people moving around, perhaps fewer guards overall. That could be an advantage. Jordan crouched in the foliage and watched as Julia and Daphne were pulled from the truck and escorted inside. He saw the corridor where they were led, the guards posted outside, rifles in hand. Then, headlights. A sleek black SUV rolled through the gate without so much as a stop, clearly expected. It parked near the entrance, and a man in a tailored suit stepped out, briefcase in hand, followed by 2 bodyguards. His appearance, so out of place in the jungle, told Jordan everything. This was a buyer, and this was a transaction. Inside, Jordan could see the man being welcomed by the same boss who had overseen operations back at the drug site. The two shook hands. Their security followed, and the door closed behind them. Jordan's body went cold. There was no more time. If he waited for Vargas's men, he might lose them forever. Gripping the pistol tightly, he began circling the compound, searching for a soft point in the perimeter. Toward the rear, the jungle pressed in close to the fence. Only one guard patrolled that stretch. Jordan waited, then darted across the clearing the moment the guard turned away. A section of the fence had been sloppily repaired. He pushed through, tearing his shirt but slipping inside unseen. Now inside the compound, he hugged the wall, inching closer to the back entrance, the one Julia and Daphne had disappeared into. His heart hammered in his chest, louder than his footsteps. Then he heard voices from just behind the door. He pressed in closer. "Quality merchandise," the buyer was saying, "especially the girl, young, strong, exactly what our people want." "The woman's valuable too," the boss replied. "Adult donors are in high demand." "Premium payouts for clean organs." Jordan froze. They weren't just captives, they were inventory. He felt the rage flood in, washing away hesitation. He stepped into the doorway, gun raised. "Let them go," he said firmly. The room froze. All eyes turned to him. The buyer, the boss, their security. "Don't move," Jordan barked, locking the weapon on the boss. "Tell your men to back off. Now." The boss raised his hand slowly, measuring him with a calm, practiced look. "You're making a very big mistake," he said. "You think you're going to walk out of here? There are 20 armed men on this property. You won't make it 10 steps. The buyer scowled and turned toward the boss. "Not my problem. I'm leaving. We'll talk again once you've cleaned up your security failure." He waved his bodyguards toward the door. "No one leaves," Jordan snapped, swinging the weapon in his direction. "Not one of you. Until my family is safe." That's all Jordan said before one of the buyer's bodyguards lunged at him. The pistol went off during the struggle, the bullet embedding in the ceiling. Rough hands yanked Jordan's arms back, twisting the weapon from his grasp. He fought to hold on, but the numbers were against him. Then, just as he thought it was over, the door behind him burst open. "Policia! Nadie se mueva!" Jordan turned. It was Ricky Gyro, this time flanked by armed officers, real ones, weapons raised, and they weren't here to negotiate. Chaos exploded across the room. The buyer's bodyguards drew first. Gunfire lit up the walls. Jordan, still trapped in a chokehold, used the distraction to slam his elbow into the ribs of the man restraining him. As the man stumbled, Jordan spotted another guard rushing the officers from the side. Instinct took over. Jordan tackled him from behind, both of them crashing into a stack of crates. The impact knocked the wind from Jordan's lungs, but the guard recovered quickly, pressing him down with a forearm across the neck. Black spots danced in Jordan's vision. Then he remembered. The sharpened wood. The piece he'd found in the jungle. The one that had carved the coordinates into the tree. Fighting through the haze, Jordan jammed his hand into his pocket, curled his fingers around the wooden shard, and drove it into the guard's thigh. The man screamed and rolled away. Jordan scrambled, snatching up the guard's fallen pistol. Around him, the room was shifting, the officers gaining control. Several traffickers were on the ground, hands behind their heads. Others had retreated deeper into the building, exchanging fire with the police. But Jordan had one focus. He had to find them. Julia. Daphne. He slipped out of the chaos and down the corridor he'd seen earlier. At the end of the hall, 2 guards stood outside a door, clearly unsure whether to defend it or join the battle behind them. Their decision was made the moment they saw Jordan charging toward them, gun in hand. Both raised their rifles, but Jordan fired first. The first guard dropped. The second reeled back, wounded but still on his feet, lining up a shot. Then another shot rang out, behind Jordan. The second guard collapsed. He spun and saw Gyro standing in the hallway, a police-issued handgun smoking in his hand. "Your family's in there?" he asked, nodding toward the door. Jordan only nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. "Then let's get them out." Gyro kicked the door hard. It gave way, crashing inward. Inside, Julia and Daphne sat tied to chairs, flinching at the sudden noise. Their eyes widened as they recognized Jordan standing in the doorway. "Dad!" Daphne sobbed. Jordan ran to her, untying her hands as fast as he could. "You found us! You really found us!" "I told you I'd never stop," he whispered, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry it took so long." As soon as her hands were free, Daphne threw her arms around him, refusing to let go. Over her shoulder, Jordan met Julia's eyes. Gyro was untying her. "Julia," Jordan said softly, reaching out. Her face remained distant, eyes wide with disbelief, as if her brain couldn't quite process it. "It's me," Jordan said gently, his hand brushing her cheek. "It's really me." Her lips parted. A breath, a whisper. "Jordan?" Her voice was ragged, whether from shouting or silence, he couldn't tell, but it broke something open inside him. Then engines. Outside, more vehicles. Jordan moved to the window just in time to see police trucks flooding into the compound. Officers in tactical gear poured out. "Backup's here," Gyro confirmed. "Let's move." They hurried down the hallway together. In the main room, officers were handcuffing the boss and his men. The buyer was among them, his suit ruined, his face twisted in fury as he was marched toward a waiting vehicle. Outside, the compound was swarming with law enforcement. Jordan scanned the crowd and spotted a familiar face, one of Detective Vargas's trusted men. The officer approached with a satellite phone. "Senor Hart," he said, offering the device. "Detective Vargas is on the line." Jordan took it with one hand, his other still wrapped protectively around Daphne, who clung to him like she never wanted to let go again. "Jordan, are you all right?" Vargas's voice came through, crackling but strong. "We're alive," Jordan answered, tears edging his voice. "All of us." "I'm glad to hear it," Vargas said. "We've secured the drug site. 5 corrupt officers are in custody. The rest of the group, either caught or on the run." "Thank you," Jordan said quietly, knowing the words could never match the weight of what Vargas had done. "An ambulance is en route to your location," the detective replied. "I'll meet you all back at the station." As Jordan returned the phone, he drew Julia and Daphne into his arms, holding them close. After 9 weeks of pain, terror, and uncertainty, they were finally together again. A medic approached to assess them, focusing especially on Julia, who still moved like someone sleepwalking through a nightmare. As she was guided toward one of the waiting transport vehicles, Jordan noticed Ricky Gyro speaking with several officers nearby, gesturing animatedly. "Is he really helping you?" Jordan asked one of the officers beside him. "Gyro?" The officer nodded. "Yes. After escaping the truck with you, he found one of our patrol teams and led them here." Jordan gave a slow nod, making a silent promise to thank the man properly when everything settled. Whatever his past, Gyro had helped save them in the end. As the convoy of police and medical vehicles began pulling away from the compound, Jordan held Daphne's hand tightly. He wasn't ready to let go, not even for a second. They climbed into a transport vehicle beside Julia, beginning the long road back toward safety. The nightmare wasn't fully behind them, but they were alive, and for now, that was enough. The white walls of the hospital room in Mitu felt almost unreal after weeks in the jungle. Jordan sat between 2 beds in a hard plastic chair, exhausted but awake, watching over Julia and Daphne as they slept under soft blankets. Both were sedated, their bodies battered but healing. Dehydration, malnutrition, insect bites, minor infections, nothing that couldn't be treated. The deeper wounds, though, the ones no scans could see, would take far longer. A soft knock pulled Jordan from his thoughts. Detective Vargas stepped into the room, eyes tired but calm. "How are they doing?" he asked, voice low. "Stable," Jordan replied. "The doctors want to keep them here for a few more days. Then, we're flying home." He ran a hand through his hair, still matted with the grime of the forest. "I don't even know how to thank you. Without your help—" Vargas raised a hand, stopping him. "I was just doing the job I swore to do." He pulled up a chair beside Jordan. "I thought you'd want an update." Jordan nodded, careful not to disturb Daphne's hand still wrapped in his, even as she slept. "We've dismantled more than just a drug operation," Vargas said. "It was part of a larger trafficking ring, active across at least 3 countries. The man who came to buy your family was a broker, connected to a network that—" He paused, glancing at Daphne. "Deals in human bodies. Their parts." Jordan's stomach turned. "And the officers?" he asked. "All 5 are in custody. There's enough evidence to tie them to at least a dozen other disappearances. Locals, tourists. This might be the largest corruption case we've ever seen." Jordan nodded slowly, trying to take it all in. Then he hesitated. "And Gyro?" he asked. "I still don't fully understand what he was doing out there." Vargas exhaled deeply. "It's complicated," he said. "He's not who he claimed to be. He wasn't working for your hotel. He's admitted to being a small-time thief who occasionally posed as a guide to rob tourists." Jordan's expression darkened. "He put my family in danger." "Yes," Vargas agreed. "But he says that wasn't his plan. According to him, he intended to take them on a short detour, steal their valuables, and bring them back. Scared, but unharmed. He's done it before." "But something went wrong." "Exactly," Vargas nodded. "He took a route he didn't know well, ended up deep in cartel-controlled territory. When they saw him with 2 outsiders, they took all 3 prisoner." Jordan leaned back in his chair, a slow, heavy breath leaving his lungs. "What happened after that?" "He tried to make a deal with them. They told him to return to the village, as a test. But by the time he got there, your report had already triggered a search. The corrupt officers recognized what had happened and dragged him back, told the cartel he couldn't be trusted. That's how he ended up locked in that cell with you, awaiting removal." Jordan looked away, eyes unfocused. After a long pause, he asked, "So what happens to him now?" "He'll be charged," Vargas said, "for fraud, for impersonating an official guide, possibly for reckless endangerment. But," he hesitated, "he also saved lives, including yours." Jordan said nothing, just sat there, still holding his daughter's hand. The line between guilt and redemption was thin out here, maybe too thin to judge, but for now, he didn't have to. All that mattered was that his family was safe, and tomorrow, they'd be going home. "Robbery and endangerment," Vargas said, answering Jordan's question. "But his cooperation, what he did during the rescue, will be considered. Justice here isn't always fast, but we try to be fair." Before Jordan could reply, movement from Julia's bed caught his attention. She was awake, fully awake. Her eyes were clearer than they had been since the moment he found her. "Julia," he whispered, moving to her side. "How do you feel?" "Better," she murmured, her voice fragile but steady. "Is it really over?" "It's over," Jordan said, taking her hand in his. "We're safe now." Detective Vargas rose quietly from his chair. "I'll give you some space. The doctor mentioned you may feel ready to give a statement soon, but take your time, Senora Hart. There's no rush." When the door clicked shut, Julia tightened her grip on Jordan's hand. "I need to tell you what happened." she said softly. You don't have to. I do, before I lose my nerve. She drew in a deep breath. They separated us right after they took us. Daphne was kept with other women, but I was taken to work in one of their labs. They forced me to handle chemicals, dangerous ones, for production. She lifted her hands, red, raw, scarred. If I made mistakes, they would threaten Daphne. Jordan clenched his jaw, his fingers curling around hers, holding them gently. We were moved every few days, she continued, sometimes jungle camps, sometimes small village warehouses. During one of the transports, I saw one of the guards using a GPS. I memorized what I could, the numbers, the screen. Jordan's breath caught. The tree? He asked. Julia nodded. Yes. Every time we stopped, I'd ask to use the bathroom. I'd scratch into a tree a little more each time, hoping someone, anyone, might find it. She paused, voice trembling. I didn't even know if anyone was still looking for us. I never stopped, Jordan said, his voice thick. Not for a single day. Tears welled in Julia's eyes. I knew you wouldn't, she whispered. That's what kept me going. She took another breath, steadier this time. 2 weeks ago, I heard them talking. They said we were too much trouble. That being Americans made it risky to keep us. They planned to sell me, and Daphne. She couldn't finish. Jordan swallowed, his entire body rigid with anger. I'm so sorry. I knew then, she went on. It was our last chance. I finished the coordinates. I didn't know if that tree was anywhere people would search, but I had to try. I couldn't let them take her. A small voice broke the silence from the other bed. Mom? Daphne had woken. Her face was pale but alert, and her eyes were filled with something new. Did you really save us? By writing on a tree? Julia smiled, soft and real, for the first time. I tried, sweetheart, but your dad, he found it. He understood. Jordan sat on the edge of Daphne's bed, reaching across to still hold Julia's hand. We all saved each other, he said quietly. That's what families do. Daphne looked at them, a tear sliding down her cheek, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was release. And then she smiled, a small smile, fragile but bright, a glimpse of the little girl still whole beneath everything. The road ahead would be long. Recovery would take months, maybe years, but they had made it through the worst. They were together, and that meant they would heal. Together. Outside the hospital window, the jungle stretched out endlessly. Vast, mysterious, still powerful, but no longer as terrifying. It had tried to take them, but it had failed. And now it stood only as a shadow behind them, while the sun poured golden light across the room, as if trying to make a new promise. Jordan made one too, to Julia, to Daphne. Never again would they be apart. The coordinates on that tree had been more than numbers. They had been a message, a thread of hope, a whisper through the leaves that someone was still fighting, still believing, and in the heart of the jungle's darkness, that whisper had led them home.